Hello and welcome to the Null channel. So today I'm doing a small piece of a much larger project. I was going to just do the whole large project, and then I realized it would be an hour or longer video describing everything that I did. So I'm just going to bring you along for the ride as we go about it. So as you can probably guess, this is a Raspberry Pi project and a Kubernetes project. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around.
3, 2, 1, 0.
The Null channel.
All right, so the very first thing you're going to have to do with a Raspberry Pi is load up your OS. Now, you can easily go ahead and download the Raspberry Pi imager and go ahead and burn onto a micro SD card a Raspberrian or even Ubuntu image. But we don't really want to use those images. First, those images are put out there as a base image with a bunch of stuff on it that we don't necessarily want. We want a purpose-driven OS, which means not this one. We want one that is made to run Kubernetes. This is actually really nice for a lot of reasons. First, out of the box, it's going to have things like swap turned off. It's going to have a distribution. We want a distribution where we don't have to add a repository for package management to support Kubernetes. We want it to already be there. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use a non-supported OS. And so I wanted to show you how you can do that because there's a few little quirky odd things because these don't have UEIF on them. And so they don't boot the standard way an OS is designed to. So let's jump into how to install. All right. So there are a couple things that you're going to need to do. First, you're going to need 4 things. You're going to need a USB drive. This is very important. You need a USB drive. You're going to need your micro SD card. You are going to need an adapter if you're me. So you might not need one if you have a micro USB card in your computer. And of course, you need a Raspberry Pi and a computer. So I guess that's 5 things. Now, I'm using the Raspberry Pi 4 because I needed as much power as possible for the build that we're going to do. And these are 4 gigabyte Raspberry Pis. All right, so the software you're going to need, really, you just need Vim and you need the Raspberry Pi imager. You can do it by the command line, bit writing it, but it's just easier to use the piece of software. So that's what we're going to do. Now, what you're first going to need to do is understand that when these boot, they don't boot the same way a standard computer does through UEIF. So that means they use something like combustion or ignition. So we're actually going to use combustion, and this script is going to be available online for you if you want to use it. But what you do is you set up a USB drive and you label the USB drive. You give it a partition called combustion, and inside that partition, you name a folder combustion, and inside that, you name a file script. And that is just a bash script. Now, you don't put the .sh on it. It's just named script. And that script will run at the very beginning of the boot sequence and configure system. So think of it as cloud init for things that don't have cloud in it. All right, so we need to configure this for that. So it's very simple to do. You're just going to insert the USB in there. The easiest way to do this is to go into a utility called disks, open up disk, select your partition that you want. Go ahead, go to format, and here you're going to give it the name combustion. And you can erase it if you want. You don't really need to. And then you can go ahead and format it. Now, I'm not going to format this because it already has mine on there, and I would prefer not to delete it right now. So as soon as that's done formatting, it shouldn't take too long. It takes about 30 seconds in total. What you need to do is then put these folders on there. So let's go ahead and look what I have put on there. if we look at this, we see that we have, now I have my public key there, because one thing that I wrote on the script that is very nice is the ability that it just sets up my public key. So it takes this file and puts it in my authorized public keys, so I can SSH directly to this as soon as it's out without using a password. So that's actually quite nice. In here, you'll see that there is just a script. So that's it. So let's check this out in Vim. You're going to need to know where your computer mounts things. That will depend on where your OS is. If you're on Ubuntu 2020 like this is, then we can do this. And now we're in the combustion partition of this hard drive, of this thumb drive. And let's just open up Vim here. And we can see here combustion folder and our script. And this is our script. So let's open it up and see what it does. So basically, it doesn't do a whole lot. We're setting the root password. Now, I'm not making a user. I actually have the script here for making a user. If you want to make a user, you can uncomment this out and you can have a user. Really, for these, I don't think a user is needed, because everything you're going to do on this node is going to require sudo. And so it's really not protecting you from anything. So might as well just use root on it. So that's what I'm doing. And then there's just a few other little things here that I'm doing. Enabling SSHD, making sure Vim Small is now, the image that I'm using, Kubic, has Vim Small by default. So it's already installed. And if you wanted to install something else here, you could do it easily. Now, I think right now is a perfect time to bring up a topic. So I work for the company that produces Zipper and Kubic and Tumbleweed and Leap. So if you don't know who that is SUSE and OpenSUSE. I just wanted to bring this up though, because while this video isn't sponsored and my channel is not sponsored by my company at all, I do like to bring up the most transparency. So while I'm building my Pi cluster off of Kubic, that is for a reason. I think that it is a good OS to do that for. This is not me trying to sell it to you though. I did actually pick it for a reason though, because it is very convenient to build a Raspberry Pi cluster out of, or just a simple development cluster. So it's interesting, worth checking out if you haven't checked it out. All right, let's get back to it. So we have this script. It's called script. It's in the folder combustion on the partition called combustion, as you can see. All right, so we can go ahead and get out of this, unmount the thumb drive. So now it is safe to remove our thumb drive, and we can go ahead and plug that in to our Raspberry Pi. You want to actually make sure that it is plugged into your Raspberry Pi before you boot for the first time. Now comes standard loading the image. You want to download what's going to be a raw. So basically, it's just the bytes, binary bytes there. So anyways, as you can see here, they love to do the Raspberry Pi OS right here. It's not called Raspberry anymore. And there's a couple other standard supported options here. You can click on Ubuntu and then select a couple versions of Ubuntu. Ubuntu Core is close to Kubic, but it's not actually the same as Kubic. Kubic is very much geared towards Kubernetes and containers, whereas Core is a little bit different. Actually, one of the reasons I don't do more SUSE stuff is because mostly I want my material to be educational, and I don't want people to feel like I have this strong bias towards one thing or another, and that's what is pushing me to, sell them something. It's not. I'm merely here to help you try to learn something. And that's what I want it to be about. The things I use, the OS, the platform, the tools, are all just tools. And that's what you can ask anybody in my company. I am very much not biased. So anyways, we don't want Ubuntu. We want our own. So let's go back in here. Let's use custom, since Kubic is not in here. And you can see I have downloaded it twice for some reason. The Raspberry Pi Cubadium Kubic snapshot. And you can see it's this .rar.xz. So that's what you want. You want this raw file. And then you choose your SSD card and you can write it. Now we can do this on the command line if we wanted to. I don't see that there's a whole lot of reason. This Raspberry Pi imager is really convenient. So yes, we could do it on the command line. I don't see a reason why to. All right, and then you're going to tell it to write. It's going to warn you. It's going to ask for your password. And then it's going to write. Now, this is going to write, and then it's also going to verify that what was written is the same. This is another reason it's nice to use this. If you just direct write, there's no verification. You can then do a manual verification yourself. Again, the tool is just easier. So that's what we're going to use. Now, while we're talking about that, let's talk about power supplies for your Raspberry Pi. If you're planning on running a cluster, something I see people not talk about is buy quality components. Now, I actually don't think Raspberry Pis are the best for a cluster. I actually think things like the Pine Rock Pro is a much better solution because of their storage. SD cards go bad after writing to them, and so they're really not good for running Kubernetes, honestly. They're just not that great. And you can do things, and we will do things to keep you from writing to the storage because the storage will just go bad. That being said, it's better to have a system that won't suffer from that, and Pine 64 gives you that system. So if you're looking at building a real one, it's going to cost you about $10 per board more, but it's $10 well spent. And yeah, just $10 well spent. So if you're wanting to see that, I will probably build a Pine cluster in the future. I actually emailed them, told them I wanted to, but I don't have the money to buy all the Pine boards. And I haven't heard back from them. But one thing that I wanted to say, if you're going to have these and they're going to run for a long period of time, there's a couple things that you're going to need. You're going to want heat sinks, some way to dissipate heat buildup, wears your units out faster. You're also going to want to buy high quality power supplies as well as high quality memory cards. If these things are running unsupervised for long periods of times, these are fire starters. And so you want to buy components that aren't going to start fires because, well, that's horrible. So don't cheap out and get the $5 power supply, buy the $12 power supply. So there are the power supplies made by Raspberry Pi themselves, and I think those are very high quality, as well as these ones from CanaKit are also very high quality. And so I have never had a problem with these, and I would recommend them in general. Not sponsored. I just would prefer your house not to burn down. All right, so now as you can see, we've successfully written it to the SD card. Sweet. We can take our SD card, slide it into our Raspberry Pi, just like so. We have our USB drive inserted. We'll want some connectivity because we're going to SSH to this. And then all that's left is to provide power. All right, now it's going to take it a little while to boot up, and we actually have to wait for the initialization process to happen to be able to SSH to it. Since I don't have a capture card, there's no way for me, even if I plug this into a monitor, to capture the output, but you're going to get to see the output of the scripts that run. So if you did plug this into a monitor and wanted to see it running, you could actually see the outputs of that, whatever you put in that script running on its first boot. And you can see we are now into our Raspberry Pi. All right. And as you can see, we have Kubic all set up. And I just wanted to show you the one last thing of why I like Kubic on the Raspberry Pi. Instead of having to go through some esoteric repository adding to get Kubernetes and Docker and Containerd, guess what? kubeadm version. kubeadm's already installed. The kubelet, kubectl, all of these things that you need to start your cluster are already here. It's not even that I don't have to add a repository. I don't have to install them. But if you wanted to look at the repositories, let's do that. So for you guys that don't know Zypper that well, Zypper is the same as apt just a package repository. I've actually wanted to do a video on Zypper versus apt because I actually like Zypper better than apt. A lot of times I think that Ubuntu has beaten SUSE in developer experience. Like I said, I'm not biased. I will say it where I think it is. And I think Zypper is actually the one place where SUSE really shines through with a really great developer user interface. So I really think that Zypper is one of the things that I love most about using a SUSE-based product. But as you can see here, you have every version of Kubernetes that you want, from API server, scheduler, kubelet, client, proxy, kubeadm, from 117 to 119. They're all right here ready for you at your fingertips. And this is what I love about Kubic in particular. If you're just wanting to play around with a cluster quickly, it's fast and easy to get set up if you're looking for something like that. And it's a great solution for in your home. All right, well, that's going to be it for today. I have more plans. We're going to be doing more with this Raspberry Pi. And so if that interests you, if you're interested in Raspberry Pis, if you're interested in Kubernetes, if you're interested in a extremely high availability Kubernetes cluster on a Raspberry Pi that has no one thing that can go down and cause it a failure, then you want to stick around, subscribe to the channel, because that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. Beyond that, all of this code is up there in the cloud. The links are below for it. There's not a whole lot here, but I did put the scripts for the USB drive. So I know that can be confusing as it is explained online. So I just wanted to do a quick tutorial on how to use that. And so that you can use Kubic or another OS that uses combustion or ignition and get started with it today. All right. Thanks for joining me. If you like this, please like and subscribe. It really helps. If you did not like this video at all and you're still around, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, stick around, see if these videos get any better for science.